Hi, my name is Anita Huberman. I'm CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. And I wanted to let you know that we have just released through our Rapid Response Business Center our second Surrey Labor Market Intelligence Report, the only one of its kind within Surrey, British Columbia. Surrey is going to be the largest city in BC very soon, and we are an opportunity city. This market report gives you the information that you need on what is happening on the ground during the pandemic to ensure that you have the plans and the goals for your business, for your organization in the short term and in the long term. For a copy of the full report, check out our website at businessinsurrey.com. I'm so pleased to welcome our partner on this project is Kerry Jothen. He's the CEO and principal of Human Capital Strategies. Kerry, welcome.
Thank you and good morning, Anita.
Good morning. Now, I wanted to ask you, what is the high-level update this month? What's happening in Surrey's business community until the end of September?
Right. Well, even though in the last few months since July, Surrey has recovered about 12,000 jobs, we're still about 25,000 less jobs than in February, just before the pandemic. And that represents a significant 8.5% deficit in jobs from February to September. And it's a cause for concern for many of Surrey's small businesses as they continue to struggle with this pandemic. However, on a positive note, I think that compared to businesses and the economy in other parts of Metro Vancouver, Surrey is well positioned to weather the pandemic storm, as we're starting to see some industries and some job categories actually coming back to levels higher than pre-pandemic times.
The opportunity in Surrey, Kerry, is that we have a very diverse industry base. And that means different challenges, different opportunities to different sectors. Can you provide us a bit of the specifics, the losses, the gains?
Sure, yes. So on the loss side, out of that 25,000 jobs that have been lost since February, about 90% of those are due to job losses in 6 industries in Surrey. Those are natural resources. Construction is almost down 10% in employment since February. Educational services is down over 21%. What's called other services, the high-touch personal services and automotive retail, etc., that's down a big 31%. Transportation and warehousing is 16% lower than it was pre-pandemic. And wholesale and retail trade, not surprising, down 12%. So these 6 add up to 90% of that 25,000. Even though we've had a comeback in the last few months of that 12,000 I mentioned before. On the other thing is that the most acute job drop was in March and April, of course, a real shock. And then some industries and employment started to come back after that on a slow basis, and then the pace of recovery speeded up a bit in the summer. Up to August and September. On the positive side, the 2 greatest gains of employment in Surrey since the start of the pandemic have been utilities and natural resource industries, as well as professional, scientific, and technical services. It's amazing to think that despite this great shock of a pandemic on the Surrey economy, that actually some industries have higher levels than before the pandemic, and I'll come back to those with some numbers a little later. In terms of types of occupations or types of jobs in Surrey that have really been impacted, no surprise, sales and services, heavily based in retail, with over almost 18,000 jobs lost since February. And then the area of education, law, social, community government services, another 5,000 plus. And the trades have been hit hard. The trades, transport, and equipment operators have lost over 9,000 since February, probably heavily influenced by the impact on construction and manufacturing in some cases. And though natural resources and agriculture occupations saw a loss of over 1,000 jobs between August and September, overall since February, those two types of jobs or occupations have actually gained 34% employment over since the pandemic started.
Kerry, you touched on this earlier where you said that some industries, some employment groups are faring better than others. But I want you to speak specifically on, some industries have seen a higher level of employment than even before the pandemic. What are those industries, and why would that even happen?
Well, I think that generally natural resources, mining, agriculture, oil and gas, and other parts of natural resources have continued on, without too much of an impact on their employment levels throughout the province and including in Surrey. So natural resources, as I said, is up by 20% higher than in February. The other one that's been very positive is utilities. And that is up by 62%, its employment level in Surrey since February. Some smaller ones are professional, scientific, and technical services. That's up 2.5% and a few thousand jobs above pre-pandemic employment levels. And while manufacturing as an industry has dropped by 5.3%, manufacturing specific occupations are up by over 20% in Surrey. Amazingly also, because we hear so much about restaurants and hotels, amazingly in Surrey, accommodation and food services employment levels have bounced back to pre-pandemic levels, not by much, but they're back to where they were before February. And this has been such an impacted sector. It shows to your question, part of your question, one of the factors is industries and businesses that have been able to pivot. In some cases, it's pivoting manufacturing to build or manufacture new types of products from what they did before the pandemic. In the case of restaurants and other food services, they pivoted in terms of how they get their food out, delivery, and adapting to how they can operate inside their restaurants and in the outdoor patios. So different industries have maintained or had less impacts on their employment in Surrey because they've been able to pivot to new opportunities and to adapt to different ways of doing business. This is why digitization is so important. This is why e-commerce, working and learning remotely, and doing other things remotely is so important.
Kerry, I think it's really important to understand and underscore when we're talking about our workforce development strategy for businesses, the population segments that have been impacted by the pandemic in Surrey, the challenges, the opportunities. What population segments have been impacted by the pandemic?
Well, first and foremost is our young people, particularly those aged 15 to 24. And in the case of BC, the unemployment rate is down in recent months from the highest part of the impact period, but youth unemployment rates are still almost double what the overall unemployment rates are in BC, and we estimate that it's quite similar in Surrey. At the provincial level, for example, there are now 38,000 less youth employed in BC today than in February. And on the other hand, there are over 23,000 more youth that are unemployed compared to February. So that's a big area. Female workers have been impacted by the job loss more so than male employees, particularly in certain industries. However, the good news is that for female workers in Surrey and BC, they fared better than female or women in Canada overall. For instance, BC women have seen a significant increase in a number of jobs in the goods producing sector. Another area of impact is non-union workers tend to be more impacted than union workers across Canada, having fewer protections of a collective agreement and just where non-union workers are concentrated in terms of what industries. So those are some. We also, and this is particularly relevant to Surrey, of course, with our diverse population and workforce, but a number of ethnic groups in Surrey, for example, South Asian, and some others, have been more dramatically impacted by the pandemic in terms of job loss and reduction of hours and whatnot. So that's another area that's very relevant to Surrey.
Well, we know in Surrey, we have 104 different languages that are spoken in our city, very multicultural. And we have the highest urban Aboriginal population within British Columbia right here in Surrey. And I wanted to just get your take on, those, just to speak to the Indigenous population, but especially those industries, those businesses, up until the end of September for our labor market intelligence report that have been most impacted by the pandemic.
Right. Well, speaking of the Indigenous population, in terms of businesses, while we don't have BC data, at the national level, recent statistics showed that businesses that are owned in majority by First Nations, Métis, or Inuit owners show that that they doubled the Canadian averages of businesses that have laid off more than 50% of their staff. So Indigenous-owned businesses significantly more impacted than non-Indigenous-owned businesses across the country. Some other industries that were particularly impacted, looking at the metric of what proportion of the businesses laid off 50% or more of their staff, were a combination of food services. 48% of those kind of businesses across Canada had laid off 50% or more of their staff. Arts, entertainment, and recreation, not surprising, 38%. Administrative and support, waste management, and remediation services, 26%. And even healthcare and social assistance, 20% of those types of businesses across the country have laid off 50% or more of their staff. One of the exceptions, interestingly, across the country is that finance and insurance businesses were least affected by layoffs across the country based on this 50% or more of your staff being laid off metric.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from Kerry Jothen, CEO and Principal of Human Capital Strategies, together with the Surrey Board of Trade, the September release of the Surrey Labor Market Intelligence Report produced so that you, as business owners, as organizations, can prepare for the short term and for the long term. Stay tuned for next month's Surrey Labor Market Intelligence Report, the only one of its kind. And remember, Surrey is an opportunity city, and the Surrey Rapid Response Business Center through the Surrey Board of Trade is here for you. Contact us. www.businessinsurrey.com. You can find our contact information. I'm Anita Huberman, CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. Thank you for listening.